I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to the Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. Well, today is Friday, and Friday we do the Healing Circle. So my colleague, Dr. Bavada Garrett Akantanya, is here. We'll bring her in a few minutes to launch the program with our regular Healing Circle protocol. Before that, I want to thank you for joining us wherever you are. Invite you to share the fact that we're live right now and we're doing this every day. We want to grow our audience. Thanks to all who have subscribed, crossed the 1,000 subscriber threshold. Our goal now is 2,000, and you've got a role to play. What you have to do is let your friends and your networks and your contacts and your people know that this is going down every day, 1 o'clock. Important conversations. I call them robust conversations about our world, our worldview, our point of view, about our freedom. Ultimately, this is about liberation for African people. And I add that liberation for African people, from my point of view, means liberation of all human beings and a creation of a system of knowledge and respect that accords dignity and appreciation for everything in existence, the living, the non-living, the animate, the inanimate, the spirit world as well. Well, I want to thank our sponsors as well. As first, we have a sponsor, Minnesota Housing. Thank them for supporting the show. And if you have a company or organization that wants to support this work, we welcome you. Just reach out to us at Insight News, and we'll bring you into the sponsorship arena as well. Well, last thing, subscribe. Tell your friends, tell your relatives that we're doing great work. We're thinking about, we haven't got it locked down yet, but I'll put it out there. I'm declaring that the week of May 19th to May 26th, that's about a Sunday to a Sunday, I believe. I'm going to call that George Floyd week. We know that May 25th was the day George Floyd was murdered, and I believe it's one of the days that changed and that is changing the world. We want to acknowledge the event, what happened on May 25th, what happened. I'm going to spend a week doing that. So from Monday through Friday and possibly on Saturday the 25th, we're doing special broadcasts. Our intent, our desire, not finalized yet, is to do the live stream live from George Floyd Square in South Minneapolis. And what we're going to do is connect with people all over planet Earth. We know that the witness that the world provided, that the world received through the genius and the bravery of a young Black woman who recorded the 10 minutes or so of the taking of George Floyd's life. That is a transformative event, and people around the world reacted to it. Some with sadness, obviously, most with sadness, but also with anger at systems that routinely and with impunity take, destroy, eliminate lives in general, Black lives in particular. And so we want to sit deeply with that the entire week of May 19th through about May 25th. We're calling that George Floyd Week, George Floyd Day being May 25th. And we want to invite you to weigh in. If you got some ideas, suggestions, people we should talk to during that week, we'd love to have those. Send us a note. Reach out to Cooper at insightnews.com with your suggestions, and we'll go from there. Well, let's begin with the Healing Circle, and Dr. B is here. Dr. B, why don't you come in, and then we'll bring in two other guests we have today. Sister Nashana Johnson, I met recently. You and I met her at an event we both attended at UROC a few weeks ago. Great event. And she talked about her work in mentoring in, I think, the Rochester community. We'll get more information on that. And then a former reporter for Insight News who is starting to write again, Azania Little, is going to be joining us. And she is going to do two things. One is talk about a story that she has written that is the cover story for the upcoming edition of Insight News. We'll show you that. Mm-hmm. But she's going to also talk about her personal story, Dr. B, with COVID-19. She is a survivor, and she has particular personal knowledge about the experience, the life-threatening experience of COVID and long COVID. And we're focused on that. Dr. B, let me welcome you and thank you and invite you to set the intention for this program today.
Thank you, Brother Al. Thank you, Baba Al. And I am excited about hearing from both of our sister guests as we talk about this, our Black liberation and our healing. And as you pointed out earlier, what we do on Fridays at this time is a very special thing. Having the healing circle is a way for us to stop and focus on what it means for us to claim our right to be well. And we begin by having a circle. Now, although we are not physically in rooms together, spiritually, we feel like we're in a gigantic circle. And in that circle, everyone has a space. Everyone is honored. There's no top or bottom or no beginning or end. So everyone in the circle has an equal access to power. And that is voice in the center of the circle. And in this sacred space, our protocol is to honor our elders, because we got here because somebody worked our way, prayed our way, dreamed our way into existence. These are the shoulders we stand on the shoulders of our elders. So we honor them. And as we honor our elders, we also honor our ancestors, because guess what? Our ancestors were the shoulders on which our elders stood. And we honor our ancestors for that reason, and also because they are closest to our Creator. So as we sit in this space, we enjoin everyone to think about our connectedness. Just like you said, Brother Al, we're all connected to each other, to the earth, to the sky, and animate and inanimate things. We're all part of this whole creation of this universe of humankind. And in our talking stick, because African people are orderly, we have a talking stick in our circle. That talking stick goes from one person to the next. And when you hold the talking stick, you have the center of attention. And sometimes it gets exciting, so you may have to ask for the stick. You have permission to ask for the stick and to relinquish it at will. So as we begin, we want to ask people to join us in this ritual of having voice in this sacred space as we honor our ancestors and say ashe for their space, for their hopes, for their dreams for us. And with that, I give the talking stick back to you.
Well,
Bye-bye.
Before you do, what's going to happen after today's program? You're going to have a special event that people can connect with. So share that first, please.
Thank you. So every last Friday of the month, when we have this show, we follow it by what we call a recovery room. So as we are jarred or intrigued by the testimonies and the learnings that we receive in the circle today, afterward we join in the recovery room through a Zoom link. And when you join in the recovery room, that is when we have sort of a town hall style of engagement. It's a conversation among everyone in the audience, and everyone is welcome to join and have voice. You can speak or not speak, but everybody's welcome to have voice. So it's open to all. And we want people to join us today after we have this riveting conversation today about ourselves and our liberation and our wellness as Black folks. So thank you for giving me that reminder to ask people to join us in the recovery room. You can see that we'll be flashing it up in periodically throughout the show, and especially for at the end. So thank you. And okay, here I'm giving the talking.
Thank you. I got it. Let me bring in Nashana Johnson first. Nashana, good afternoon. Welcome to the conversation. We met when we were at an event at UROC here in Minneapolis a couple of Saturdays ago. And it was an event put on by, I think, The Village. That's the right name of the project, but a community project. And it was about restoring and healing. And there were powerful testimonies. And you were one of the people that came up from the audience and talked about your work in Rochester. And so I wanted to connect with you to say, let's spend some time talking about who you are and what you do and the spirit that guides you, the mission that you're on. So let me pass this talking stick to you, Nashana Johnson Lenoir, and invite you to to say who you are and what your mission is. What's your purpose?
Thank you, Mr. Al, for that talking stick. And that was some great information that you just shared, Dr. B, from the Wellness Center. So thank you for the talking piece. My name is Nashana Johnson Lenore. I am the founding director of Journey, Inc. Journey is a life skills program for teenage youth. But before I get into our mission and who we are, I'll give you guys a little background story, and I'll try to sum up my life as briefly as I can. I named my organization Journey because my life has indeed been a journey. Few background pieces. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois, born and raised on the South Side, Inglewood. My grandfather is Joe Taylor, the boxer. He won the Golden Gloves in 1954. That's my dad's father. And so
Joe Taylor?
Joe Taylor, that's my grandfather. Yes, that's my dad's dad. And grew up on the South Side of Chicago. Both my parents struggled. My dad struggled with alcoholism. My mom struggled with crack cocaine. Eventually, me and my three siblings landed in the DCFS system in Chicago. So I jumped from foster home to foster home, majority of my childhood from age 4 all the way until I emancipated out at age 18. At age 11, I became somewhat of a poster child for my foster care agency called UCAN, where I created an award called the YLA Award. It stands for the Youth Leadership Award. And I created that award because the funny brief story is I had a foster mom who used to hide us in the basement, me and my sister, and she was just a mean lady, and she ended up getting an award that night. And I decided to run away from home. I said, why is she getting this award when there's some amazing young people within our organization who are Black, got scholarships for college? Nobody's acknowledging these kids. You know, it's a group of kids who, my brother was a part of a rap group called You Can Voices, and they had lyrics that were positive lyrics, which was not known, in those times. And nobody was acknowledging any of the great work. So I skipped school several days a week and demanded that they let me utilize the space to have an awards show to acknowledge them on my own. And it was such a great turnout that the agency continued that, and now they're celebrating, I believe, the 24th or 25th annual YLA Awards. And I go back home for it every year. And so it sends for about 5 foster kids from the agency on full scholarships to college. So taking a stand, I've been taking a stand for what's right since I was a young girl. Following creating that award, I was 2 ladies came into my life to be a mentor to me at age 12. One of the ladies worked for the Chicago Sun-Times newspaper, and the other lady was the promotions manager for Ebony and Jet magazine. And those 2 Black women came into my life at 12 years old and was such a positive impact that look at what I've turned out to today. That just goes to show that having that involvement in positive people and young people's lives, it really makes a difference. But long story short, that mentor of mine connected me with another lady from the Chicago Defender newspaper, where I became the youngest writer for the Chicago Defender newspaper, writing for the Bud Billiken news column. And now I am one of the sponsor marshals. I go back home each year, and I'm a sponsor marshal for the Chicago Defender. Last year was my first year. I'm returning this year. So it's an honor to go back home and volunteer and give back to the community through the Bud Billiken Parade. I moved to Minnesota. I became a teen parent. I got pregnant at age 15. You guys, I'm not a good public speaker, so you got to excuse me.
You're great. No, you're fine. You're excellent. Go ahead.
So I relocated to Rochester when I was 19 years old, 19 or 20 years old. I became a mom At 15, I had my first child. I went through some hardships and had my daughter, and then I had twins at 17. So I had 3 kids by the time I was 18.
Wow.
So trying to finish school, I got my GED, and I worked several different odd and end jobs. And Chicago got violent, and my mom retired. My foster mom, I had an amazing foster mom. Her name was Freddie Brooks. She was a foster parent with UCAN for over 30 years, and the alderman's wife. She just was a wonderful lady. She passed away in 2018, but she was with me and helped me change my life and supported me and my girls, and we got a fresh start. She retired from her job, and I didn't want my kids in public school, so we decided to get out of Chicago, where my other family was here in Minnesota. And when I got here, that's what brought me to the Journey program when I was 19, 20 years old. Relocated here with my daughters for a fresh start, and I realized that Rochester didn't have anything to offer young Black kids. And I was working off of a speeding ticket, and a lawyer friend of mine said, just work at a nonprofit to pay it off. And I did that, and that's where the mission started. I'm like, how did I get here with my life? I had so much potential as a young girl, lots of positive influences, but somewhere along the line, I made a few bad decisions. And I said, I wish I would have known what I knew now when I was a kid. And I decided to just dedicate my life to doing that. Now, God gave me the calling to do it. I just ignored it for a really very long time. When I first moved out here, I had some awesome jobs and work construction, making $35 an hour, most money I had ever made. And as a young mom, that's some good money. But God said, no, that's not what I want you to do. You keep seeking out. I was doing the right thing. I was staying on the right track, but I was not following the mission that God had on my life. And so every time I would do the journey work, like building the business plan and doing stuff, it was hard, and I would go back to work. But long story short, I went on and did it after falling out on a construction site and asking God to save my life. And I'm going to listen to him this time. And I did. And he said, I'm going to open up doors for you. And from there, the Journey Project was born. So Journey is an 8 steps to promotion workshop, and is designed for, our mission is to improve the lives of at-risk youth. And we do that by teaching them everything that we wish we would have learned when we were kids. Our 8 steps to promotion workshop consists of getting to know me, where they learn to build foundational skills of who they are and figure out their direction. Respect and responsibility. You can't do nothing if you don't know how to respect yourself and somebody else. Coping skills, we teach them how to cope in different situations, and I learned how to do that from going from foster home to foster home. So we teach them coping skills, how to deal with people, places, and situations. My dad was an alcoholic, and that's all he used to say: people, places, and things, and so we teach them how to cope in different places and with people and situations. And relations and relationships is a kind word for sex. Relations is a kind word for sex. We teach them sex education, STDs, teen pregnancies, domestic violence, and recognizing relations and relationships, understanding a positive relationship versus an unhealthy relationship. Law and legal rights, the importance of education and money management. We connect those youth with mentors. Once they graduate from our program, they wear an actual cap and gown, like high school graduation, because I didn't get to walk across that stage and have that experience, and I know how that impacted my life. So I wanted young people to be able to have that experience so that they have the hunger for graduation. And I'm happy to say that all of our alumni have graduated from high school. We got a whole nother group that's graduating, and it's working. And we connect them with mentors, not just people that's saying, hey, I'm going to be a mentor. But if that kid on day one at that first workshop say they want to be a doctor, I got 8 weeks to go find a doctor to mentor that youth. So who better to teach you how to be or what you want to be than somebody that's already there successfully. And outside of that, we connect their families with community resources. depending on whatever their individual need is at the time that they complete the workshop. And the last thing that we do, we are a social, we've been more active in this area of social advocacy. We're a social justice organization. We're one of the only social justice organizations in Rochester outside of the NAACP. So we do a lot of advocacy work for young people and their families who are African American or identify as Black. We don't have enough of that in the area, but that's what we do in a nutshell.
Listen, what a great story. I'm going to be pivoting to Azania Little in a second to build on what you said. But Dr. B, first of all, let me have you react and respond. I'm going to pass the talking stick to you, Dr. B, just to give reflections. And what are you hearing in this testimony?
I'm very, very proud of you, sister, because what you described is what we call post-traumatic growth. So from the pain, you gained. From the losses, you grew. And as a psychologist, our biggest hope is that when somebody endures the things that you've just described, and we know you only touched the surface, because it's deeper than, that you didn't have like the 5 hours it would take to tell the whole story. But from going through that, you're showing your resilience and that you have grown from the traumatic losses. You've made your way through difficult times and you're still standing. And I think it's an excellent example of post-traumatic growth, and that everything that goes bad doesn't have to end bad if we make different choices. So thank you for teaching. All I remember saying when I was hearing you is teach, sister, teach. And you're still teaching.
Yes, and still learning. We won the Jefferson Awards in New York City for top 5 nonprofits in America, the Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis Award. And that's one of the top 5 highest rankings that a U.S. citizen can receive within our country. And it was amazing to receive that award. I'm still shocked a whole year later. But now I serve as a board member over there now. So with Whoopi Goldberg. So I'm so happy, the journey. We're still following it, still much work to be done, but thank you very much.
Yeah.
Look at the archives at the Jefferson. Congratulations. One of my first cousins was a recipient of the Jefferson Awards back in 1960, maybe 6 or 67, 68. So name is Bernard Powell. And he was out of Kansas City where I grew up, but look him up. He did amazing work. He was killed, assassinated at the age of 33. That's a story that we'll tell down the road, but that obviously impacted my life and the life of all of us in our family and the entire community. Let me bring Sister Azania Little in. I'm going to start Azania by saying, hello, African. And I don't know if you remember greeting me that way. On one of your trips back from Africa, you came up and said, hello, African. I said, what you call me? Because I was hostile to the idea. And you said, hello, African. I thought about it and I sat with it for a second. I said, say that again. And you said, hello, African. Every time you said it, it sounded better and better and better. So that was a pivotal moment, just hearing your voice and the energy, the spirit you brought. And it was one of asking me to look at myself. I'm an African man, and I'm an African in an arena that prized the devaluation of Africanity, that prized devaluation of Blackness, and that encouraged our people to be anything and everything but who we are and who we're meant to be. And you came through with a spirit and a light and a fire and a simplicity and a clarity. And it was in those 2 words, hello, African. So Azania, hello, African.
Hello, Al.
2 things. I wanted 2 things to happen today. You and I go back a long ways. You used to be a regular reporter for Insight News, and you've connected with me again just of late. We did a piece about a few years ago. We ran it 8 parts about your journey through the movement. We probably will revisit that in the future as well. But this week, the cover story for Insight News is written by you. And Cooper, pull that up. And this is why this all ties together. This is a story about Sister Rosemary Nevels Williams, and the title that I gave it is Wearing the Armor of Community. And if you read this story, you'll really get so much out of it. The story operates on several levels at the same time. It's a story about a birthday party. Flip to page 3, Cooper, on this. It's a story about a birthday party. Go back one. There we go. Go back. There we go. That's called our second front page. And about people coming together to celebrate Rosemary Nevels Williams' 75th birthday. And the people that were there, according to Azania, were like the who's who of activists in the community. Rosemary, talk about this story, first of all, and what you experienced, and invite people to pick it up when it comes out over the weekend and on Monday. But what was the story about, and what lessons do you think people should learn from the story that you pulled together on this event?
Well, before I go into that, Elle, I have to say a couple of things. First
Sure.
of all, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can, perfectly.
Okay, I want to just first of all say thank you. Just in terms of you helped me to really identify who I was as a writer, and in terms of giving me opportunities to discover that I'm not a 100-word writer or a 200-word writer, that I was basically a feature writer, and you allowed for me to do that. So thank you. And the second thing I need to say is, yes, I did say hello, African, but it's only because of people that mentored me, like Kwame Ture, Sophie Carmichael. We were in the same organization, and a brother named Mukasa, whose name was formerly Willie Ricks. So I can't, much as I'd like to take credit for that, those are brothers, and then there were sisters too that I was standing on their shoulders. So I came back here to Minnesota, and I just did what the organization was doing. So, but Rosemary's birthday party was something I had never experienced before. It was a gathering of people that were activists in the community, people that were movers and shakers in the community, but equally as profound was, you know, just to give you a background on Rosemary, Rosemary buried her only son. And part of the reason that this was so challenging for me is that I had not been living in Minnesota. I had, for a period of time, I had moved to Africa, and then I moved to Washington State. And so Rosemary and I were friends, and her daughter is my goddaughter, but I had not seen anyone of them for about 30 years. I had not, the last time I saw Rosemary, she had her little boy, Tyrone. He was always by her side. She came to our events. We worked at Phyllis Wheatley together. So that in itself was very emotional for me. But on top of that was seeing the women that Rosemary mentored, and these were all women who had buried their children by state troopers, police officers. And Rosemary, in the article, I talked about how what made her what gave her the ability to survive was she allowed for the community to rally around her. And then she got to a point, which is at her birthday party, and she said, let's dance. So to be 75, I'm right behind her in my 70s. That's not only sometimes it can be really physically hard to be able to do that in your 70s, but it more importantly is the emotional piece that it was clear to everyone around her that she was free. Mm-hmm. You know, because sometimes those of us in the community, we toss the word around freedom lightly. And not only in the activist community, but also in the church. Who the Son has set free is free indeed. You know, but it's a whole, I mean, you could say those words, but are you really free? Rosemary is free. Mm-hmm. And as a result of her being free, would say at one point, maybe there were 300 people there, at the highest
Mm-hmm.
point. She made everybody around her free. I mean, liberated in their mind. And just to give you a snapshot of what that looked like, one of the women who I don't know if it's appropriate to mention her name, so I'm not going to, but she's high profile in the news, and she was sitting at the head table with Rosemary, and literally she was having a really difficult time, and she leaned her head on Rosemary and very openly wept. She was very comfortable with.
That's in the story. You should mention it. You should tell that story. Tell that. That's the mom.
Well, first of all, I was there with a photographer named Steve Ozone, who is just a phenomenal photographer. I found it just amazing and an honor to have him, say that he would do the pictures. But he did a picture of this young lady leaning on Rosemary. So I went to Rosemary, and Rosemary explained who she was. And so when I went to greet her, she just started crying. And you used to go into these functions, and people, they have their mask on. Sometimes just, life is life, and so just sometimes to protect yourself. But here's someone that she was very comfortable with her pain and her loss, and she just started crying. And at that moment, it was very disarming to me. But I realized that is really what that party offered everybody that was there.
Who was she?
Because everybody there had different stories. There was one man that had just, I knew that he had just buried his mom the day before. And I said, that's amazing. You just buried your mom yesterday and you're here. And, he looked like he wanted to cry. And he said he started making excuses for himself. And he had a mask on, and he started apologizing for it. But he said, Zania, I haven't been out since they lifted the mandates. And Rosemary and I had talked about that there was a lot of people that were there that they were still kind of isolated. So to come out on this level and to be told they could be free, they could dance. If you want to, you can cry, which some people did. I met women there that when I left, I decided that these are really my heroes, because I was used to heroes being, in my entire life, heroes were always men. My father was my number one hero. Elle, you were another one of my heroes. And then I had heroes like Stokely Carmichael, Kwame, Mukasa, who is Willie Ricks. And as I got older and as I experienced life, I began to see that people who are my heroes are those who are free. Because I always wanted to be free. I always thought that, and we used to say it in the movement, that, just, saying you're African and going to Africa and all these things, which I did, would make me free. And I found out that was not the case. So I tried to summarize all of those things in the article, but I couldn't even actually begin to.
Well, let me do this. I want to take you back to the person that you mentioned was leaning on Rosemary's shoulder, because I want you to say the name and tell the story, because the story you wrote linked the lives of at least three mothers who lost their lives to gun violence and a couple of them police violence. So that woman, tell her name. I think we want to speak her name in honor of her.
With all due respect,
Mm-hmm.
I respect you so much. I guess that because, you and I have talked about that we've got to tell these women's stories.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that I want to, at this point, and I have put it out there to one of them, I want them to trust me,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to, get online and say their name, because one of the things that I'm really cognitive of is the fact that we do have opportunists in our community that I think one of them was awarded just this huge amount of money. And I thought to myself, oh boy, I know she's got people coming after her. And I want to make sure that if they give me that privilege to tell their stories, and I feel in a different way. I'll just say, with all due respect, sir, I'd like to maybe not give their name. If you
No,
want to,
no. I
that
certainly I respect the idea,
yeah.
the sentiment, and the trust that you want to build. I'll
Hmm.
simply direct people, and we put it in the comment section. A copy of the article is there, and if you
Hmm.
read the article, and one of the powerful things with the article, Azania, I haven't told you this, is that you did connect these three women, at least three, who have a similar experience of pain and of
Hmm.
loss. And what I take away from your article is two things. You said one of them, and I said one of them. You said that uh, despite this history of pain and trauma, the lesson of Sister Neville's Williams is a lesson about carrying, going through it, but also declaring, I want to dance. And when you wrote that, the message to me was some people dance to know, some people sing to know, some people write to know, but these are all ways of knowing. And these are all
Wow.
ultimately Africana ways of knowing. And if we acknowledge that, and so the other thing that is awesome is that people outside of our community don't have an idea that all of us who have been visited by this pain, we see each other, we know each other, we are with each other, and we feel each other. And so you had several parents, and relatives of people who have this pain. And despite the pain and the loss, these people showed up, and at the command and the invitation of Rosemary in the role of matriarch for the community, everybody got up to dance. That's a powerful story.
That's
That's where
good.
healing comes from, I think.
Hmm.
So that's my interpretation. That's why I love the story. Azania, you also have talked to me about your experience, and you're going to be writing about going
Hmm.
through COVID. Take a minute, if you would, as much as you want to talk about your experience in COVID, both at first, and I think you told me that you have experienced what they're calling long COVID. Talk about your
Yeah.
story in COVID.
Okay. I was in Washington State, which, if people can remember, when COVID hit the country, it hit Washington State first. And the other thing that people don't know about Washington State is that Washington State, Washington State, Idaho, those type of states, they're far right regions. So it was like huge Trump land in a time when Trump was saying, "Oh, it doesn't exist. It's a China virus, and don't wear a mask," and all the rest of that. So um, I was preparing actually and had all the paperwork in. I was going into the mission field, and I was getting all the paperwork done. I was getting ready to just, I had lived and taught in Africa before, but I just really felt that it was time to go. And so I did the research to find out what was going on, and I went into the China news at that time, and I saw that they were wearing masks, and I saw they were wearing gloves. So I thought that basically if I wear the gloves and the mask that I would be fine, because I was trying to be well so I could leave the country. And that's when I started to get sick. And if just to refresh people's memory, Washington is a state that there was this nursing home that became like a petri dish, and I think something like 40 people died. That's before they were telling people to put masks on. By the way, it was right by Microsoft's international headquarters.
Mm.
So despite my efforts, I started to get sick, and I just thought it was the flu. And so I just got in the bed, and I thought, well, I'll just sleep this off because I was real tired. So I turned my phone off because I know my daughter would be calling me, and it never went away. And by that time, I had been in the bed about 2 weeks, and I was too weak to even, because I wanted to go to the hospital, but I just thought, well, I can't even get up to wash up. So long story short, what I ended up doing, didn't know it. I was that period where they can actually pick up the virus in you. I was doing it at home. And by the time I did get in somewhere, my daughter ended up flying out to Washington to find out what was going on. Then I kept testing negative. So they didn't know what was wrong with me. At one point, they were talking about doing surgery, and I kept going back to the hospital. I kept getting sick. And my daughter said, "Mom, you've got to come home." My mom, by the way, had died of COVID. The good part is that she was 92, but she died from the effects of COVID, and I was sick and couldn't go to her funeral. So that's kind of compounded things in terms of not being able to have closure with my mom. So I ended up coming home and still had not gotten home, being here in Minnesota. And I stayed with my daughter, and I just kept getting sick. I mean, I would have these periods in between getting sick where I was well, and I would be like, "Oh, glad that's over." And then I would start doing my regular thing, and then I'd crash again. So finally, one day, my foot started swelling up, and I kept trying to hide it from my daughter because she was a big advocate of something's wrong, go to the doctor. But it started to get so big, my daughter said, I'm getting ready to take you to the emergency room. Well, that ended up being a blood clot to my lung, which they call pulmonary embolism. And that's when they caught that I had COVID. So try to condense things. There is no test where they can take and definitively say, yes, you have post-COVID. But there's people like the Mayo Clinic, and there's some other places that can pretty muchly, but the pulmonary embolism for them was you definitely, the blood clot is that they've proven that that's, related to it. So I had one incident where I went in the hospital, and I started continually having this, I'm better, and then I'm not better. And 20 times in a period of 2.5 years, between two ICU visits, in emergency rooms and hospitalizations and these rehab places, being in your 70s, pretty much people were saying in the beginning, well, people that are senior citizens are not really making it. They're not really living. And people that have these health problems. Well, I had health problems and I was a senior citizen. So continuing to have these, these issues was, pretty, there was really nothing I can do about it. So at one point, I had such a bad cognitive decline, which I like to just mention that many times in the whole discussion about COVID and post-COVID, they don't mention many of the symptoms because, well, first of all, with the post-COVID, everybody has post-COVID differently. But with COVID, and especially people with post-COVID, there is a severe cognitive decline. So at one point, hospitalization, where my daughter had taken me in, they do a real quick cognitive thing. What's your name? Where you at? What city? I didn't even know my name. And I was embarrassed, but I just kept thinking, well, they said, what city are you in? I didn't even know what city I was in. And so because African Americans are not heard in the first place in a hospital situation, they decided that they did, well, first of all, a lot of hospitals don't know exactly how to treat post-COVID, and they didn't really know how to treat COVID. They decided that that was me, that I have this severe cognitive decline because I don't know my name. And my daughter and I didn't have any training in what to do under certain circumstances, because for the most part, my daughter is my number one support system. So they began to threaten her. I couldn't help her, but they began to threaten her because she's a professional. She's a college professor. And they began to tell her, well, you can't take her home because she's cognitively impaired. And plus, another issue that I used to have, I would fall. I couldn't stand up for long periods of time. And then he had to threaten her, telling her, well, she's a vulnerable adult, and if you take her home because you have stairs, you can be charged. I didn't really know even if I knew what was going on, there was nothing that I could particularly do about that. And so what they did, without my consent, and because my daughter didn't have training, I didn't have training, that's where I went. I went to an assisted living facility. And that is where I was there about 7 days. And that is, I guess, the biggest message that I like to give to people that might be having post-COVID and don't know it. Get your fight back. Because when I was sitting in that assisted living and saw people with no legs and in wheelchairs, and I was like, and I was still sick, but I walked over there, and I might have crawled over there to the place that you give notice. And they said, where are you going? And I said, I'm getting out of here. I got online. I saw Mayo Clinic had they had done some research about post-COVID. I did what was necessary to get admitted there. And everybody was like, well, where are you going to live? They weren't admitting me in the hospital. A Mayo Clinic is basically a outpatient. And my daughter, too, was like, Mom, where are you going to live? And I was just like, if I have to sleep under a bridge, I'm getting well. And I guess that I would say to people, and I'm really convinced that there's a lot of people that have post-COVID that don't know it, because I didn't know it, that I want to just encourage you, because it's a long journey. I mean, one of the things that I had was because the vomiting was such a part of who I was, that my esophagus had gotten torn. I got kidney damage. I mean, post-COVID gets inside of your organs, including your heart. And it just wreaks damage to one by one, sometimes all at once. And I would just say that, number one, get your fight back. What does that mean? I think that it means different things to different people. For me, it meant that I just needed to remember that, number one, that I was not post-COVID. I was not sick, even though physically I was sick, but I had to say it. I had to say that no matter what it takes, no matter who God is going to use, I'm not going down like this, and that's just, and my daughter was really concerned because my daughter, when I went to Africa to live and to teach, she was with me. And, a lot of people that have adult children know how they get to this point where they try to tell you what to do, which is kind of cute, and you let them just because, it is kind of cute. But she knew when she came to see her mom that next time, she knew not to say anything, because she knows that when I get like that, there's no turning back. And that's when I began I would say in the very beginning parts of being healed. I just want to speak to people that might have experienced, man, what's wrong? I mean, I'm sick, I'm nauseous, I can't get well, I'm so tired, which is chronic fatigue syndrome is a part of it. Fibromyalgia, where you're just all your joints and your shoulders, your knees.
That's right.
Everything, it hurts all the time. Migraines, falling. I had all of these, but whoever might be listening and this is for, perhaps you've been to the doctor, and the doctors, how the doctors can look at you like, you keep coming back and they'll look at you like, and they might not say you're nuts, but they can look at you and just not treat you, especially if you're African American or a person of color.
That's right.
And
let me jump in, Azania.
Okay.
This has been great. I wanted to have both Ms. Shawana and Dr. B give a chance to respond and to build on what you're saying till we pass the circle around, or pass the talking stick around. Dr. B, let me go to you first. I know I've been watching your expressions over the course of Azania's testimony. What are you feeling? What are you thinking? And what lessons are you picking up?
Thank you for asking, Brother Al. Sister Azania, as I listen to you in this journey, listen to that, my sister, this journey that we're all on toward healing ourselves and our community. It requires getting your fight on. And sometimes we don't try because we've learned to be helpless. Some of us have tried and failed, and our psychological research tells us that they get to the point that they just feel like nothing I can do can impact change. But when you hold on to your fights, you find that your voice is quickly attached, and you find that you don't have to fight alone. Because when I heard from what I took from what you're saying, I was just connecting it to what I was hearing from Nashana, and how two Black women on either end of this bookend, one in her early career, one on the later end of her career, and in the middle is middle-aged people trying to do what you're doing. I feel like the young people, they got the legs to fight it, and the older people, you got to have the punch, and your punch has to go. You ain't got time to be running. You got to punch. And I think that what I'm hearing here is really a formula for us to address our pain. We can't do it without reaching for our younger people and our babies. We can't do it without listening to our elders, because there's a Yoruba proverb that says, when you lose an elder, a library burns. So much wisdom you carry, just your inner voice is so rich and wide and beautiful that to me it's inspiring. And I feel like this is a divine appointment right up in here. We got to have this little combo back, because this is a powerful combo of talking about this devastating disease. And so many Black folks died because of pulmonary embolisms, and having that impact of that, and doctors not paying attention. So I'm just glad to see you here. And with that, I'll pass the talking stick to Sister Nashana, so that you can say a little something, because we're about to roll out and we got a sponsor to acknowledge. Let me just give you the talking stick, sister.
I just want to say, Sister Azania, Mother Africa, it's just an honor just to hear you share your story and words of wisdom, because we don't get to hear too many of our elder these days talk about issues that's so important, like how do you speak up for yourself during medical issues and things like that. Hearing you speak about your experience with long COVID make me just think, should I go get checked out about long COVID? Because I had COVID, and guys, I've had a lot of these symptoms that you're describing. And my doctor gave me the same runaround, how they look at you like, what's something wrong with you? You keep coming back, And that's why advocacy is so important to me. Because when you're doing and going at something by yourself, when you look like us, you don't get no help. We have to go at efforts and things together. So I'm not going to be long-winded, but I just want to say that everything I took from you it was confirmation that I'm on the right path on my journey. Teaching the importance of health and wellness is so important to the African community, especially to young women. Like, how many young women, it's so crazy how they don't know about their reproductive system. They don't know about watching for your period, what herbs to use, and just overall health and wellness for the body. You don't supposed to wait till you reach a certain age to start worrying about your health and taking it seriously. I'm 36 years old, and herbalism, natural remedies. I'm so happy that your daughter, took you home, took you and put you somewhere, and you said, no, I got to get out of here. Not that I don't vouch for Mayo Clinic. Journey is based out of the headquarters of Mayo Clinic, which is Rochester, Minnesota. And so I know all too well about the medical world, but I think it just confirms that we need to have some type of accountability for ourselves as a community to be able to
That's right.
advocate for people like us who go into these medical facilities or in anywhere, dentist office, employment, where we can say, hey, this is discrimination that we face and it has to get tackled head on.
Teach
Has
now.
to
There you
have
go.
you know, to do that collectively as a team. And so those are our current efforts that we're working on right now, creating that circle of people so that we can be the new age revolutionaries to focus on knocking down these barriers, one discrimination, one barrier at a time, collectively. So that
I'm glad to hear you call yourself a new age revolutionary. I would call Azania a classic revolutionary. She represented the fight and the fierceness and the tenacity of our people seeking freedom and freedom at all costs. Azania, take a couple of minutes if you would. We're almost out of time. Talk about your Africa story. I just remember you going and you said you taught in Africa. Describe what your experiences were in being in Africa.
Well, my experiences were that, well, there are two sides. I went to South Africa when Nelson Mandela had gotten out of Robben Island, and then I went as a guest, went to celebrate Ghana's independence Day, and then I went there to live. And my experiences were, well, first of all, I don't feel that you can really experience Africa just visiting, because you have your American dollars, you know, and you have that open door, you can come back. But I really feel that I really experienced it because I was a worker. I got paid, their denomination was cedis then. And when I ran out of my dollars, then I really felt, you know, just the struggle that, you know, Africans have economically. But what I really loved was just the support system that I received when I was at, and that was just available, whether you were a visitor or whether you actually lived there. There's a support system that's available there, which I carry back. And in fact, I had always said that when I'm retired, I wanted to retire in Africa, because I always admired the way the older people lived. You know, they just lived in these little houses, and they, you know, they come out and they'd have chickens running around in the yard, and they'd mess around in the garden, and, you know, they had, you know, a young person there that would, you know, help them. It was just that I always said that's the way to retire, you know. So that's what I was trying to do. But I guess I wanted to just mention too, because I think for me, the most important thing in Africa is the support system. But in terms of what we're talking about, that everybody's talking about, the support system, I wanted to just say that, you know, I had never been chronically sick, and I never thought I was going to be chronically sick, but there was some really strange things that would happen, like, you know, in terms of support, you know, because I'm a licensed minister now. So I have people that they say they're ministers, and they say they believe in just the whole theology of Jesus. But I've been here almost 4 years. Not one person that professed to know the name of Jesus even came to visit or sent a card. And it took a long time to process that. But what I learned was that when it comes to chronic illness, people can't really put it, you know, if we can't navigate it and put it in a nice little, neat little box, like, oh, this person has this and they'll be out next week sometime, but be sick for a long period of time. And I just have come to believe, number one, some people that you're expecting to support, they don't really have anything to give, you know, themselves. They might be struggling themselves. And then there is a mystique around COVID and post-COVID, just in terms of like AIDS was, in a way. Well, I don't want to get too close to that. I might get on me.
We got to stop there because we got to go to our next program. Azania, sister,
okay.
thank you so much. Nashana,
Yeah, thank you
so
for
much.
having me.
Dr.
And nice
B,
meeting you, ladies.
I'm going to have you close the program and invite people to the recovery room as well, because there's some things we need to discuss, and that's a place to do it. Dr. B?
Yes, thank you so much. And Ashe, Brother Al, and thank you all for joining us. We do want people to join us right now. The recovery room is the ID for the Zoom link is right here, going right at the bottom of the screen. And we just want people to feel that they're welcome to come. And if we get in there, sometimes it's 3 of us, sometimes it's 20. So let's see what we get. And I want to especially ask our guests to join me for a little bit, in case people have questions they want to ask of you, and just to make some noise so people understand what we're talking about. So with that, I say thank you.
And with that, I thank you as well. I'm Al McFarlane. Join us next time for the Conversation with Al McFarlane. We'll see you. Take care. Bye-bye.
But you didn't get to finish that. And I was
Can someone